of a U.S. general, a top general, who is making a comment about a potential war with China in 2025. Get your reaction to this. NBC News is citing a memo to his officers with this quote. They say, "I hope I am wrong," he says to them. "My gut tells me we'll fight in 2025. What do you make of that, and how do you think that's going to be received in China?
Well, I hope he's wrong as well. I think he's right, though.
That was the chair of the House Foreign Affairs Committee this weekend, agreeing with four-star Air Force General Mike Minahan's prediction of a U.S. war with China. General Minahan sent a memo to the officers he commands to prepare themselves for a fight in 2025. NBC News exclusively obtained that memo, and in it he recommends target practice. Quote, "Unrepentant lethality matters most. Aim for the head." In a statement, the Pentagon tried to distance itself from the general's comments, saying they are, quote, "not representative of the department's view on China." Joining me now is California Congressman and member of the House Armed Services Committee, Khanna. So, Congressman, this is unnerving, to say the least, and to have Chair McCall agree with it is also pretty unnerving. Do you have any guidance, any knowledge about flaring tensions that the public should know about?
Well, Katie, first of all, in our democracy, elected leaders make decisions about war, not generals. So obviously there's concern about the rising tensions in the Taiwan Strait. There have been exercises where the Chinese Navy has crossed the median line. But our job is to de-escalate and not to think that war in any way is inevitable. And the other thing is we need to focus on the economics to get the production back from China and the manufacturing here.
You know, Congress approved its last formal declaration of war in World War II. So we've gone to war without declaring that we've gone to war. So I'm just wondering, we have Taiwan coming up. There's a presidential election coming up. Is there something else going on? Is the tension with China going farther than just economic tension?
Well, there are tensions. As I mentioned, the Chinese Navy has crossed the median line. There have been Chinese tests that have gone over Taiwan airspace. The missiles haven't landed in Taiwan, but landed in the ocean. This is all public information. But the point is that we have to engage with China. It would be catastrophic to have a war in China, and we should be engaged in tough diplomacy to make sure that there is no military invasion of Taiwan. I believe there are things we can do to make sure that's the case, strengthening the relationship with India, with Japan, with the Philippines, making sure that Taiwan is capable of asymmetrical defense against any invasion. And at the same time, we need to have an economic rebalancing with China.
Do you have any sense of what we would do on behalf of Taiwan if China did invade? Would we be arming them and funding them like we're doing with Ukraine, or would we get involved physically?
Well, I don't think it's going to come to that, but the president has been clear. The United States policy is clear in the 1979 Act, which is that we would come to the support. We would provide support to Taiwan, and China shouldn't underestimate that. And, of course, we've had a policy purposely of ambiguity, not spelling out exactly what we would do, but making it very clear that there would be some aid to Taiwan.
Do you think that what's happening in Ukraine with the funding of Ukraine against Russia, is that a deterrent for President Xi?
Absolutely. I think that's why it's so important that we succeed in Ukraine and make it clear to the world that Putin's unprovoked aggression will not stand. And the president deserves enormous credit, as does Secretary of State Tony Blinken. And we've shown that Putin has been isolated, that it is totally in Putin's has been catastrophic for the Russian economy. And I think Xi is watching that and realizing that it was no small matter if he were to invade Taiwan. That's why I don't think he will ultimately.
So, Congressman, what do you make of this general's memo? It's a four-star general. He commands quite a few people. Is it just paranoia from him? What do you make of this being sent out?
Well, you know, they say in Silicon Valley, only the paranoid survive. So I understand. He's got a huge duty to the men and women who work for him, and he wants to make sure that they're on guard and prepared. But that's why we don't have generals making our policy. We have diplomats making our policy. We have the president making our policy. And I have faith in Tony Blinken, who is our representative in his talks with China, and our president to make sure that we are tough, that we make it clear that the armed invasion of Taiwan will not stand, but that we affirm the one China policy, talk about economic rebalancing. This is a time for statesmanship, and I believe that statesmanship will prevail.
Congressman Ro Khanna, thanks as always for being with us. We appreciate it.